So, first and foremost, welcome, Carmel, to Carmel. Hello.
We're going
Thank
to have
you.
a lot of fun with this.
I know. As I said, it's been hanging around. It's not really a very common name in Australia. Carmel isn't. In my hometown in Ireland, it is very common.
Yes.
So much so, there was another Carmel Murphy around my age, and she had a sister called Bernie Murphy. I had a sister called Bernie Murphy. So, yeah, but not very common here in Australia. What about in New Zealand, where you are?
Well, interestingly, no, it's not common at all, except I belong to Westpac, one of my banks, and in the exact same branch, and there's millions of branches, of course,
yes,
there's two Carmel M. Murphys, and I quite often get her mail.
Oh, and you're Carmel M. Murphy. I didn't realize that. I'm Carmel M. Murphy as well.
Oh, well, there you go.
My God. There's something woo going on here, but that's okay. But welcome to For Feck's Sake Marketing, and thank you so much in the middle of a storm that you're still showing up. So thank God the internet is stable enough for us to have this chat.
Thank you so much. I'm praying that it will stay. It will stay.
Yeah, cool. So it's just got to be a conversation for people to get to know you and to obviously help the audience out there looking, because I know you are just that woman all about bloody networking, and I loved your story. So tell us a little bit about who Carmel Murphy is, as in who you are, and how you came to be where you are now.
Okay. Well, it's obviously a lifelong story, but essentially 10 years ago, I was absolutely terrified of strangers. I couldn't meet any one person in a cafe for a coffee, let alone go along to events or do public speaking now. So and really what sort of started that journey for me was that I grew up in a huge family, Irish, Catholic. And so both my parents are the first of 10 children. And so I had all those aunties and uncles and then all of their partners. So that's close to 40 to start with. Yeah. And then there's umpteen lots of grandchildren. I'm the fifth oldest on one side and the fourth oldest, and the youngest is only about a month old. So there you go.
Right. Wow.
So I grew up in this huge family environment where we always had occasions where we could catch up. So there was always a birthday, some sort of celebration, a funeral, whatever the case may be. There was always an occasion to catch up. So I didn't actually have to have any friends as such. I didn't need to make friends. I even went to school with all my cousins.
Yes, of course. Wow.
So that was sort of partly what happened. And then I went to high school, and this was where the fear really hit home. I spent 5 years essentially going along to every single class I had, and just in fight and flight mode in the classroom, absolutely terrified that the teacher was going to ask me a question, and 80% of the time they didn't.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Every single class I was just gripped by fear, and they thought I had a comprehension problem for the first 6 months I was at high school. And I actually went home at night and taught myself the lessons, but I did that right through high school. I don't know how I survived, but I did. And then I got lost at university because it's easy to get lost there and just melt into the melting pot. And then I started my corporate life, and all of a sudden I realized, actually, I need to know how to do people. But that didn't stop me from hiding either, because I purposely chose 2 jobs, 4 years each, where I only interacted with the first one. I only interacted with 4 people the whole time, and the other one 8 people.
Wow.
So, and it was only really the thing that sort of broke it for me is I got absolutely sick to death of being scared.
Right.
I got to that breaking point of, I've just got to do something. It doesn't matter what it is. I've just got to take action.
Yeah.
And it didn't come easily. So, I decided that I would go to networking events. I was working full time, but try and go to networking events before and after work. And I would turn up to the front door and freeze. I couldn't actually get in there. And then that happened for the first 6 events. And at one time I actually blacked out. That's how gripped I was there. But then I set myself a goal of, even if you never talk to someone at this event, just go and be in that room for the 2 hours.
Yeah.
And so I did that for 8 or 10 times. And just over a 2-year period, I just got more and more confident. I was then able to say a sentence the next time I went, and it grew from there. And
Yeah.
the whole way through, I wrote myself a textbook of what worked and what didn't work. And it was purely for me. I wasn't going to be sharing it with anyone else, but it turned out to be the very first workshop for Networking Queen. And I didn't actually anticipate starting this business either. I knew I wanted to have a business one day, didn't know what it was going to be. And everyone said to me, you've come from being this person who was, sweaty palms, just hideous. You cringe for me because it was just awful.
Yeah.
And I've just broken out of this prison of my own making. And I just feel so liberated. And because now I know how powerful networking is, I wanted to be able to then go and help other people do it for themselves.
Yeah. Wow, what a great story. I can't believe you blacked out. Oh my God.
Yeah. and the funniest compliment I've ever had, a backhanded compliment, has been, now I've heard your story and I know how bad your personal story is. I'm nowhere near as bad as that, so I think you can help me.
Yeah, backhanded compliment. And the funny thing is, I'm quite an extrovert, but yet going into networking events, I'm quite often the person that I'll hang around the edges for a while, or I'll go to the toilet, pretending I'm looking all this, blah blah blah. But
Yeah.
sometimes it's that discomfort of going up to like strangers, like that you've never met before, and kind of going, "Excuse me, can I?" It's like a kid in the playground. Can I play with you?
Yeah.
You can't kind of quite say
that. Well, I affectionately
awesome.
tell people because they don't really understand necessarily what the networking queen does. So in its most simplistic definition, or not definition, the most simplistic way that I describe it is that we teach dating for business.
I love it. I love
because everybody gets the concept of personal dating.
Yeah.
Most people don't sort of jump into bed straight away. So it's a process of catch up for a coffee, then maybe a meal, then lunch, and build up to it. And that's what it's really about.
Yeah, actually, and so, like, I love what you said. I didn't really want to start a business, but there's sometimes women in particular find there's kind of an itch of something. We don't know what it is, but as you say, something happens and we got no more, and what else can I do? So tell me, for the people watching as well, what's the one, if you can, and we'll cover off some more, most important thing about networking for business?
I think people make it too big, and it's too hard to comprehend for people. So I love to tell people that the most simplistic definition I've come up with is that it's about connecting well with others.
Yeah.
However we go about that. Because otherwise, it just becomes too big. People focus on the conversation, and actually everything else that builds up to the conversation and what happens after the conversation is much more important than the words.
Right. Okay.
Because, I mean, as you know, with a first impression, over 70% of a first impression is made by everything that's not spoken. Yeah. So then when we do speak, we need to make those words count.
We need to make them match to the perception of the presentation. So, for example, I have a really old beaten up car, like really, really bad, really bad. I love my little beaten up car. However, I bought a different car because the perception when I would rock up to a networking event could be completely wrong, just because I actually have no ego around my bloody car. But had I rocked up to a lot of events in that, now it's a patchwork car, it's like pretty ordinary. People have that perception, and then you get out and you're this authority, trying to show you're an authority in business. It can be a mismatch of what's gone before. So I get what you mean. Yeah, awesome.
And I think too, it's quite hard. Like my values and the values of my business, I talk about transparency and authenticity, but you also need to put some sort of levels or boundaries in place, because obviously you can't go over the one extreme or the other, because like you say, you want to be an authority, and yes, you want to put yourself out there, but to what degree? And I'm always constantly trying to figure out where is that boundary line.
I
don't know if you find that.
Yeah, I have found that. And once I brought in more and more authenticity, because it's one of my highest values too, that's why I'm giggling. My business has gone much more like that. But like, I mean, I don't make a video and say, oh, I've got a sore toe and I had a bad day and I'll do the ugly cry. But I will do the, hey, that happens sometimes, you
Yeah.
know, like I'll tell the truth. But I do believe that people have a perception of what success is. And if you don't show up in their world showing some inclination to being what they perceive as success, well, then they're not going to see you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not smokes and mirrors or anything like that. Like I'm dressed up today because I was doing a presentation this morning. So I go in my slacks and my heels and my black jacket because that's how people would expect a professional person to show up.
Yes.
You know, but the rest of the time, if the truth's be known, I'm probably sitting here with a sarong on the bottom part now and dressed up here. Now, I don't mind telling people that because that's the truth of what we do at home.
Yeah.
You know, so I don't have to show them the sarong. That would be too authentic.
We could
So,
have a behind the scenes shot though later. I'm sure your viewers would love to see that.
oh, I've done that with, I have a jigsaw pants and I've actually done that a few times with my jigsaw pants, but that's okay. So tell me along that line, so success. So what is success to you, Carmel?
It's funny because I speak to a lot of people who do public speaking and they say, I hate that question because
Yeah.
success is so big and it's so personal.
Yes.
But I actually love that question because I found a quote about 5 years ago and I just absolutely love it. And I live by it or try to live by it every day. And it goes a little something like this. And I'll share a copy with you so you can share it with the viewers. But it's from a man called Tom Morris, who I don't know anything about.
Okay.
But the quote is, success is about who you are, not what you have. Successful people discover their talents, develop their talents, and use those talents to benefit others as well as themselves. And
I love that.
that's what really hit me, was the focus on others first, serving others, being of value to others, showing others how they can be great. And then automatically you reap the rewards and
You
get
do.
that receiving.
By leading by example too, by being great, like by doing it, by, I call it failing forward or exploring forward. Like people say, how
Yeah.
do you do that? It's like, I have no idea, but I'm going to go and do it. And then I'll tell you what's worked and what hasn't.
Yeah.
And that's what we share in our membership. It's like, well, that worked, that didn't, that, you know, and happy to be that person that does that. I think maybe it's an older thing. I'm not sure what it is for you, but as I've gotten older, for me, it's like I don't care so much about stuffing it up anymore because it's in the stuff up that we learn the lesson.
Yes.
And that we can apply it and just show other people it's okay to fall flat in your face every now and again. You get up and people forget about you in 5 minutes. They're more worried about themselves. And actually,
that's a way that to break down barriers so quickly, and then it just makes you so relatable. Oh, she's just like me.
Yeah,
she's the other thing. When people first meet me and they hear titled The Networking Queen, they automatically assume, oh, she must be an extrovert and she's born this way and she's always been on stage.
Yeah.
And I was completely uncomfortable with that title, I have to say, for 18 months before I actually embraced it. And the reason was, you know, my star is actually a Leo, but I think I'm much more a Cancer.
Right.
So
okay.
I step out, and again, this is coming back to those values. I step out and go on stage and do these things because I know it's necessary for the business, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that's my most comfort zone.
Yes. Yes, I get that.
So yeah, it's amazing how those sorts of things just impact, and yeah.
Oh, look, and I know that the other day, actually, that's how we reconnected again, because you had just done your first live. Yeah, on LinkedIn, I think it was, which was done. Look, I was doing a presentation today and people are going, oh, I need to get it perfect. And oh, I need to get, and I'm going, just do it. I never, ever listen to myself back again. I just don't. I put it out there. But if it's wrong, it's wrong. What's going to happen? It'll disappear down the feed in 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Well, I mean, as you say, I was absolutely petrified. One of my fears is petrified of doing selfie videos. And again, I got to that breaking point of I just have to take action. I'm sick of this being scared. I'm going to do something. So literally 2 weeks ago, I put up my first video on LinkedIn, and that was so empowering. And again, I felt liberated. I was amazed by the amount of support that came back and said, wow, that's your first video, you've done a great job. One of the rules I set for myself actually was to only have one take, because I'm one of those people,
Yes.
if I do more than one, I'll be doing 25 and
Yes,
still not happy with it,
yes,
and it won't go anywhere.
Yeah.
So I've done my third video yesterday,
Well
and
done.
every time it's one take. So I have
Yeah.
one opportunity, and I find that the first one's always the best one anyway, because you don't get into panic mode, you don't
Yes.
overanalyze anything, it comes naturally, you can use your hands and, you know, facial expressions, body language much better.
Yeah, absolutely. Otherwise, you're overthinking it. I usually go with 3 bullet points. You know, I'm talking about this topic of 3 bullet points because I know I can expand on them, and I just have there to keep me on track, because God knows I can talk a bit. And I find that that's the best way to go. You know, if you have a message that your ideal client needs to hear, to put that out there is really powerful. Tell me what is one of, and I know we've all made heaps. If you haven't, if an entrepreneur or business owner says, I've never made any mistakes, I'm sorry, you're a liar. What are some of the biggest mistakes that you've made along the way?
The biggest one, I think, was taking feedback from people who weren't eligible or the right people to give me that feedback. So they either don't work in what I'm, or have ever done what I'm doing or trying to achieve. And that was partly my mistake, because I asked family members and friends who wanted to support me, but also wanted to tell the truth. So
with the best of intentions, of course, but
with the best
they're
of
not
intentions,
qualified to give that feedback. Yeah.
But quite often it came from a tall poppy kind of scenario of, oh no, don't do it, just stay where you are.
Go back and get a job.
Yeah. So I think, taking feedback from people who weren't qualified to give it.
Yeah.
And that even included, I have a little 60-second feedback form that I give out at the end of when I do keynote speaking. And some people, you know, might write the most cutting things about me that I just thought, how can that be true? Or, you know, and I always think that no matter what feedback we have for people, we can always give it back in a constructive way that's diplomatic as well.
Yeah.
And so I actually have come to a point now, I actually have a system for the feedback forms that if anyone does write anything nasty, they automatically get tossed if they haven't written their name at the bottom, so that I can actually confer with them and talk through it. Because if they aren't prepared to own that criticism, well then, you know, what relevance does it have unless I can correspond and learn from it and actually be able to grow from it?
Yeah.
So
I'm the same. I take feedback, I look at it and I go, well, is it true? Is it something I need to change that my ideal client needs to know? Or is it just, you know, a tire kicker? Or is it somebody that's not qualified to answer? Or is it somebody that just,
or they've had a bad
day
and they just want to take it out on you, which happens as well. And, you know, I've got much better at doing that with all sorts of things. When I'm driving, everything, oh, they must be having a bad day.
Yes. And I come from hospitality, so let me tell you, oh my God, I've seen people on the bad side of the alcohol or a complaint. And I used to be the person that was always called to deal with the complaint, because I understood that. I'm like, they're not mad at me. They're mad at something that's happened earlier today, something else. And this is just a little icing on the cake. So when they run out of wind, it's always like, okay, how can I fix that? Well, that was my favorite question. How can I fix that for you?
Yeah.
And it used to stop so many people. They go, oh, well, you can buy me a drink. Sure, done. And they have nowhere to go. Like, you know, it's just, phenomenal. But I love that. It's so true. Taking feedback from people that aren't qualified. And it doesn't mean that they don't have your best intentions either, sometimes with family and that. But sometimes they're going, oh, why are you working so hard? Just go and have a job. And it's like, well, I did that and I didn't like it.
Yeah.
So,
and it sort of follows actually a Brené Brown quote, and I have to paraphrase it here because I don't have it in front of me, but it was around that if you're not willing to be in the arena, whether that's public speaking, networking, whatever scenario, then I'm not prepared to take your feedback. And that's where I got it from. That's where I learned the lesson from.
One of my favorite quotes. It's like, if you haven't got that dirt on your face and in the arena with me, get out. I don't care about your feedback because you haven't tried it.
Yeah.
And so I love that.
Yeah.
Same mind. Look at this. So um what are the things that I've learned over time, and maybe you're the same, is putting habits into place, making sure that we're disciplined. And I don't mean I'm a bit of a, I don't like too much discipline. I don't like to know what to do. But I have put some success habits in. So things that are becoming so habitual that they help me make sure that I've got stuff done. So what are your success habits?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. There's probably 3 areas, and hopefully I'll get through them, but I might be too long. But the first one is I love to-do lists. So
Right.
I love the sense of achievement to be able to tick things off daily.
Yeah.
Yeah. So love that one, and that's always been great in terms of that sense of achievement. The other one is I've set 3 goals for my business for 2021.
Yeah.
And they really work to the strategy of what I'm trying to achieve. So the viewers don't actually know this, but I've just come back at the end of January from maternity leave.
Yes, I was going to ask you about that. You've got a young child too, and you're doing all this stuff.
Yeah. So LinkedIn has actually changed quite a bit. So I was intending to go on maternity leave for 6 months and start back in the middle of last year. But in New Zealand, we were in level 4 lockdown.
Okay.
So that didn't work. And because I'm a single parent and he and I are a bubble, I couldn't have babysitters, and it relied on me only working when he was asleep, which, as we know,
Right.
with children doesn't necessarily happen at the right times.
No.
So, everything had changed when I came back. So I had to really put in place some habits that worked for me. So I had 3 key things that I wanted to achieve this year, and then broke that down into daily habits. So
Right.
the 3 things I wanted to achieve was get back on the speaking ladder, because I hadn't done any speaking, and I, as most people probably do, prefer to be face to face. Again, I'm online as well. Run and be guests on podcasts or online events. So thank you, Carmel. And start doing selfie videos, which again is something I have started. So those were the 3 key things. And then to break that down into daily habits, it was 2 parts really. One is getting the mindset right. So I'm not a very good, well, I'm fine, but a morning person. I wouldn't say I'm a morning person. So I need the first hour of the day to myself, which can be tricky when you're, a mother to a young one.
Yeah.
But before he fully wakes up, I try and get an hour to myself where I, meditate, pray, do yoga, do some exercise if I can, and just prepare myself for the day.
Yeah.
And then I can actually leave the house, and not that I'm not kind or rude to people, but just getting yourself in the right frame of mind for the day.
Oh, absolutely.
And then in terms of things that I do for the business on a daily basis, I only learnt this about a month ago, that for LinkedIn, there's only 1% of the whole population of LinkedIn that actually post once a week. The rest don't post at all. And I was worried that I was only posting twice a week. I've now increased that to 3 times a week, but I was worried that I wasn't doing enough, and yet actually.
Wow, because I post 5 times a week on LinkedIn.
Yeah, so I post 3 times a week on LinkedIn. I commit to doing a blog a month, and I absolutely hate them, but I am doing them. One next week, so there we go. A selfie video once a week, and an interview once a fortnight.
Well, I was going to say, hot tip, I was teaching it this morning, actually, in the thing I was doing, and it was about videos. And I said, well, if you do a video, you can actually put it into a transcriber, like Otter or something like that, and you've already got a blog. You've got your bones of the blog. You just have to tweak it and make it pretty. So just do more videos and you'll be there.
Well, one of the rules I set for myself, though, was to keep it to 1 minute. So, because I had a lot of feedback from people that they didn't want to watch videos longer than a minute before I started. So then I had to, I'd like to keep that to a minute. So it's a snapshot. But yes, a series of those together could create that blog.
Yeah. I'm not 100% sure about LinkedIn, but I know in Facebook, you need to keep your videos to about 3 minutes in order for the people to find you. Because by the time it goes up, and then Facebook, the algorithm is going, hey, Carmel's talking, where's all her friends? And then you finish in a minute, they've gone, oh, don't worry, she's gone.
Oh, okay. So, yeah. Well, that's good to know. See?
I'm not too sure about LinkedIn, but yeah, definitely the average is about 3 minutes. So if it's really, value adding to the people that are listening to it, then they're going to listen. I mean, look at us. How long are we? We're nearly 30 minutes here and we're still talking. So yeah. So, and on that, we are nearly 30 minutes here, but that's okay. We can go a little bit over or under, whatever it is. But I really want to know that if somebody was to ask you the top 3 things, tips, or whatever you want to put on them, that you would give to anyone that's walking into a networking event, what would they be?
So the first one is actually thinking about your approach. So many people think of going along to a networking event as simply turning up in a sort of ad hoc approach, but we actually need to be a bit more deliberate about that. And it doesn't mean that you have to invest a lot of time in it. But what I do is there are 3 questions that I think about in order to prepare myself to go along to events, whether it's online or in person. So the first one is, what am I doing and being when I'm networking? And really that comes back to, am I focused on what's happening in the room or online, rather than thinking about picking up the kids later, what's for dinner, checking my phone, being distracted by other people in the room, whatever the case may be. Am I fully focused on what I'm doing, and how do I create that environment when I'm there?
Yeah.
Then a follow-on to that is, how do I create meaningful and authentic relationships with people? And that's a whole long answer, but I'll cover that a little bit in the second tip. And then the last one is, how do I stand out, but for the right reasons? Right.
I love that one. Yes.
And it's some simple things. Like sometimes I see that, I'm at an event. I know I've organized events, so I know how involved they can be. Yeah. And so sometimes I see, staff struggling, waiters, whatever the case may be. And so I offer to take a tray of food around and end up getting to chat to people. And it helps them out. They feel grateful. I get to meet lots of people and don't necessarily have to get stuck. I can move on and then come back to the people that I want to re-engage with. So that's a simple little trick. At a breakfast networking event one time, there were 300 people in the room and only 10 on our table. And we had literally 3 minutes to get to know each other before the formalities started on stage. And so I thought, okay, how am I going to quickly work this? We couldn't yell across the table. So I picked up the water jar and went round and offered everybody a glass of water. And that gave me sort of 20, 30 seconds with each person just to make that initial connection.
Wow. They're awesome little tricks that, you wouldn't necessarily think of. So
and the other one I love is a personal handwritten note after the event. So I love thanking people for their time. And if you have to do it online, personalize that message. Don't send it.
Yeah, absolutely. I hate those. And you can tell when they're copy and paste. They've just changed the name and blah, blah, blah. I don't know if you're interested, but it's like, no, I'm not interested in what you're inviting me to when we haven't actually built up any kind of communication. Imagine if I'd reached out to you and said, hey, Carmel, and this, and here's my free PDF, and here's my this, and come for my course. And oh, by the way, do you want to do an interview? You would have said, go and stick that up your backside.
Yeah.
If we hadn't made some kind of relationship first.
Yeah. And as I say, I love handwritten notes because there's so few and far between now. Yeah. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you send it in the post either. You could take a photo and then still put it on Messenger chat or wherever.
That's really cool. Take a photo, because I always remember.
Voice message.
Yeah, voice messages I do a lot, but I always remember being in a training room about almost 2 years ago, and there was some girl up on the stage and I was a participant and they were unpacking something, but I threw a few questions at her that helped her out. And she came over to me later with a little Post-it note and she just put it on the desk and it just went, thank you so much for helping you. You made being up on the stage so much easier. And I was like, oh, that's so special. So you're right. That's such a unique little thing. Thank you for that.
Yeah. That just feeling valued and appreciated goes a long way,
Yeah.
because people then want to reciprocate.
What is it, the old saying? People may not remember what you say, but they remember how you made them feel.
Yeah,
One way
Maya
to say it.
Angelou. Yeah.
Yeah. I have 2 more questions to ask you. Number
Oh.
1 is, if you were not doing what you're doing now, what would you be doing instead?
Ooh. Well, my ideal goal actually is to go around the world doing public speaking, so I can kick into my habit of travel, because I've
Yes.
always traveled. And it's interesting, I would say I'm 90% introvert, but there are 3 areas where I consider myself extrovert. Or I love traveling on my own, don't have a problem with it at all. And I throw myself into all sorts of deep ends, I suppose, with that. Dancing and what's the other one? Oh, it's gone from my head.
Yeah. I had that happen to
wear
me
anything
today.
I like.
Oh, right. Okay. Beautiful. I love travel as well. I love traveling, anywhere and everywhere. I was very fortunate. It's, gosh, nearly 2 years ago now, I did a bucket list trip. So I went to Ireland. I actually ran an event in Ireland. And so I was in Ireland for 4 weeks, and I did a retreat in Ireland as well. And then I went to Greece, and my partner flew over and met me in Greece. We did Greece and we did Italy. And I'm so glad now with all this that's happened, because it's like I was away for 6 or 7 weeks and it was marvelous. But I love traveling too.
I ended up doing 4 trips while I was pregnant, where I was public speaking overseas.
Oh, wow.
So I was just starting that. Then I got pregnant, and then obviously COVID happened. And the last invitation I had was to go to Canada, and I've never been to Canada, when I was 8.5 months pregnant.
Okay.
So that didn't happen.
That was a bit close. That's okay.
It was going to be delayed for 6 months, but didn't quite happen.
People kept saying in December, oh my God, I can't wait for 2020 to be over. Wait, roll on 2021. It's like, okay, what's different? And the last question is, if people want to contact you, Carmel, other than Googling Carmel Murphy, and the 2 of us might show up, what's the best way for them to communicate with you?
LinkedIn, actually.
LinkedIn. Okay.
That's where I have everything that I do all the time is up there, and obviously we're connected, so if they find you, they'll find me.
Yeah. We'll be somewhere around each other, just Carmel Murphy and Queen, and you'll find one of us.
The 2 queens.
Awesome. Carmel, thank you so much for joining me today, and maybe we'll do it again soon. Maybe we'll dig deeper into some more of those networking tips, especially online, because I know people really need to know that it's okay giving the handwritten note. I love your idea of a photo, but we can't kind of do it as well online as we used to do it in person too. But thank you in your storm for joining me and being
we're
so
in the eye of the
gracious
storm at the moment, and apologies to everyone for the lighting, but that was the best I could do under the circumstances, and luckily the internet held out for us. So
yes, and look, we can see your
blessing.
beautiful face, and we got the lovely message that we needed to. So thank you so much, and I look forward to connecting with you even more.
Thank you so much.